So, welcome to this webinar on sleep mastery. I'm Anthony Hartcher. I'm a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. And I must say, sleep's really become a major part of my work as a clinical nutritionist because it affects our nutrition, our ability to move and have energy, to exercise. It affects our mental health. It affects our relationships. And so I'm beginning to realize that sleep is a key foundation. And it's often I see clients and it's where they're most needing support. So I've certainly really dug into the sleep research. And what I'll be presenting today is the latest on sleep research by the leading professor in sleep research. So, before I start, just wanted to share a little bit about me for those that don't know me, and sorry for those that do. So, as I said, I'm a qualified clinical nutritionist, and I've done 2 degrees in health. So, I did my first degree in complementary medicine, and that was important to me because I really saw health as no single point of health has all the answers. And I've always seen health as if we work and collaborate together, just like an organization does in terms of its different divisions, then we can achieve the best outcome for the individual that's presenting in front of us. So I really wanted to understand what all the other modalities, health modalities did and how they would benefit my clients. So I completed that Bachelor Complementary Medicine, and then I went on to do a Bachelor of Health Science in Nutrition and Dietetic Medicine. Uh, in saying that, I certainly didn't start at this point, and it was really me discovering my passion and purpose later on in life. My starting point was a chemical engineer, and it did lay a strong foundation for me operating today because engineering taught me how to solve problems, and today I'm now solving health problems. So it's been really helpful in my grounding. And it's also enabled me to better understand the corporate pressures that people are under in the workforce. So I did 15 years in corporate, so I understand entirely what you're going through in terms of the demands on you and your lifestyle. So I've lived it. And what I'm presenting today is techniques and tips that work within that framework of, the corporate lifestyle. So enough about me. Let's get into what we're talking about. But I need to put it into context of overall health. And this diagram is the holistic health pyramid, and it conveys the importance of prioritization around health. And as you can see, sleep is a cornerstone foundation of overall health, and hence probably why you're here. The statistics show that 40% of us suffer sleep deprivation of some sort. And that's only what's reported. There's probably a whole lot of other people out there that are not reporting it to doctors, or the medical professionals aren't actually asking the question around sleep because they don't have time in the consultation. So sleep is becoming a real issue, and the World Health Organization is acknowledging this because it has such a impact on mental health. And as you know, mental health's been deteriorating as with sleep. So they've been on a parallel journey together downwards, which is very sad. And I think events like the pandemic have only worsened sleep and have only worsened our mental health. So we certainly need to get back on track. And I hope to share that with you today on how we can do that around sleep. So the other areas that I see fundamental for health, and I want to speak to them because I don't want you to lose sight of what else is important around health. So certainly a mindful mindset, which will cover this. So one thing you'll walk away from this presentation is how interconnected the various elements that are important to health are. And I constantly will be talking about how important it is to have this mindful mindset and to sprinkle it throughout your day. Our relationships are fundamental to health. And, as you know, when you're sleep deprived, your ability to interact, collaborate is impaired. So we certainly need sleep for that. When you're sleep deprived, you will realize that you don't eat well. And the research shows that when you are sleep deprived, you'll consume 300 more calories than when you're non-sleep deprived. So that will equate over a working year to around 7.5 kilograms of extra weight that you'll be carrying. And in saying that, what happens when you're sleep deprived is that your lean muscle mass also deteriorates. So you're not only gaining, the fat mass that you don't want, but you're also losing lean muscle tissue when you're sleep deprived. And so our nutrition, or our choices around nutrition, are really impaired when we're sleep deprived. We will go for more higher calorific foods when we're sleep deprived, and we don't have the hormone regulation as we would like. And when I refer to hormone regulation, I'm referring to the hormones associated with eating and feeling full. So ghrelin is the hormone for you, it's that hormone that indicates that you're hungry. And when you're sleep deprived, that is elevated. Ghrelin is elevated. And so you feel hungrier all day. And leptin, which is the satiety, so it tells you that you're full, that is down regulated when you're sleep deprived. So essentially, what's happening is you're hungry all day and you never feel satisfied. And so you keep eating, and hence why you'll consume an extra 300 calories on average. So on some days, you may consume 500. That's 300 is just an average. So hence why we need to have good sleep in order for us to have a good day around our eating habits. And when we're sleep deprived, we generally don't have the energy to move our bodies like we would. And so you don't have the energy to do that training session, and you often miss it as a result of being sleep deprived. And on the top of this holistic health pyramid is our ability to be resilient. So this is a stress ball, and this stress ball is balanced. So stress is good when we're in control of it, and not good for us when we're out of control. So when stress overwhelms us and we're not in control of what's happening, then that's when stress is not good. But when we turn stress on and we have control of it, it's a good thing. So, for example, it enables you to work towards a deadline. However, you need to know when to turn it off and to be in control of it. And so you need to be doing everything else underneath that stress ball that you can see on this diagram in order to have your stress balanced, and that for you to be in control. When you're out of control, when it's unbalanced, it will fall off and your stress will overwhelm you. And hence why stress is actually a major talking point in this presentation, because it is so present in today's living and in our workplace, that we need techniques to help get in control of our stress, to better manage it so that we can sleep at night. So enough of the holistic health pyramid, and let's get into why we sleep. So I want to acknowledge a lot of the understanding what I'm sharing with you today comes from Professor Matthew Walker. And so if you're not convinced after this webinar of why sleep should be, really a number one pillar of your health, buy his book. He will convince you with all the evidence, all his research that he's done around sleep. So if you're not convinced by me and you need more convincing, I suggest you buy his book. So why we sleep is we need it to consolidate our memories. So what we've learned today, if we want to retain that, we need to have our sleep so that we actually take it from temporary storage into permanent storage. So we're moving it from the hippocampus, which is our temporal storage, to our cortex, which is our main hard drive. So this is what happens when we're sleeping. So if you're sleep deprived and you're studying or you're learning or you're wanting to solve a problem from that day, you're impaired of the ability to solve that problem if you don't sleep. So sleep is fundamental for ongoing learning, problem solving. Creativity, it's essential for creativity. So what happens in a particular phase of sleep, particularly in our dreaming state, which is our REM state of sleep, is where we start connecting the new bits of information with old historic bits of information and looking for linkage. So our brain does that. REM is very active state of sleep, and it's our dreaming state, and it's predominantly at the end of our sleep cycle. Uh, Cleaning. So cleaning happens. So what happens? We clean away waste products from our brain that's happened through metabolism, through the process of oxidation, and we need to get those out of our brain so that we don't inflame our brain. If we're not cleaning our brain, we're not sleeping, we have neural inflammation. So we have our brain that's inflamed, and you can imagine an inflamed brain. You want to picture a brain on fire. It doesn't function well. And what happens is an inflamed brain will put you in that fight or flight mode. So that mode where you feel threatened, and you know what you do when you feel threatened, how you respond to certain conversations will be a response with anger. You'll be more judgmental, and you're impaired creativity, and you got impaired rationality. We don't want that with an inflamed brain, and we know that inflammation in the brain results in poor mental health outcomes. So we want to clean our brain. Cleaning is an essential function of why we sleep, is to clean out the waste products. Also, cleaning, we clean out the not so good events of the day. So our brain goes through this process of things that have happened to you that you're thinking, oh, that was just the worst. I hope that, I just don't wish that upon anyone, or, that is also cleaned out. So memories that we don't want to retain are also washed out. So it's phenomenal in terms of what Matthew Walker presents in relation to evidence behind that. So everything I'm presenting here has an evidence backing, and Matthew covers that in detail in his book. The physiology repair happens. So when I was saying before that our muscle tissue will actually disintegrate and will actually put on more weight, that's one of the functions that happen physically to us when we're sleep deprived, or when we're not allowing that restorative sleep. And that restorative sleep happens in the early part of the night. So that creativity, dreaming happens later on in the night. So that's early morning. You need both phases. You need your REM and you need your non-REM. So your non-REM is your slow wave, low activity, but that's where you're consolidating your memory. That's also when we produce our human growth hormone, which enables us to repair, do cellular repair. If we're not repairing our cells, it also repairs our DNA. So that's when DNA can go unrepaired and can mutate, and potentially there's been links with sleep deprivation and cancer. So we need that physiological repair, and we need that early sleep at night. And when I say early sleep at night, this physiological repair is happening between that 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So if you're going to bed after midnight, you're missing a lot of this physical repair that goes on. So this is where you're destroying your muscle tissue, you're increasing your propensity to gain fat cells, and you're affecting your metabolism. So sleep deprivation's been associated with blood sugar spikes. So one night of sleep deprivation can put you in the pre-diabetic state, just one night. So it affects, our metabolic rate of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And there's a whole lot of other factors. It affects our hormones, which I mentioned before, around satiety and feeling hungry. It affects our sexual reproductive hormones, and it affects our immune response. So we have a dampened immune response as a result of sleep deprivation. In terms of psychological support, so a good night's sleep will help us be better resilient the next day in terms of the way in which we manage our emotions. And this has been proven, and you probably know from your own experience how you respond the next day when you're sleep deprived. So if you've been busy working towards work deadlines, working through the night, your ability to have rational conversations and to withstand stressful events is really impaired after that sleep deprivation. So it's really important from our emotional well-being that we get a good night's sleep, because we're better resilient to any things that are thrown to us in terms of words that are said to us. We can better respond to those words and not exacerbate the fire. So we don't want to respond back in anger, because that makes the other person more angry and it makes the conversational non-productive. So certainly there's a big psychological support factor to why we sleep. It's really that emotional regulation. So what's important around sleep? The number one important thing that Matthew recommends is consistency. So it's the same time to bed and the same time awake. Now, I'll acknowledge here that yes, there is such thing as the chronotype, and when I say the chronotype, it's the morning larks and the night owls. So your circadian rhythm it's not the same for everyone. I mean, we all have a circadian rhythm, which is our night-day cycle, but that rhythm is different for depending on whether you're. So I think 40% of people are morning larks, 30% are night owls. So a high proportion of each, and then 10% are sort of a blend or a hybrid of both. So our workplace, our work environment is set up around morning larks and not night owls. And so this really has a big impact on the performance of people that are night owls, so to speak. So I just want to put everything into context that when I'm speaking and what I'm recommending is quite general in nature, and it could need some tailorization to you as what your chronotype is. So just bear that in mind, that I'm speaking generally and it's not tailored advice, because we do have the differences with people. But I think it's important for certainly managers to understand in the corporate world is that with the way in which the 9 to 5 day is set up, it works in favor of those morning larks and you'll get really good performance out of them throughout the day. Whereas the night owls will really struggle with their productivity, their creativity, which could affect their performance. So we need to bear that in mind as well. So I think we need a more flexible workplace ultimately. Same with schooling. So in terms of our day activities, we need to be mindful of them. I mean, because often we think about night is that I need to have just good sleep hygiene, but that sleep hygiene only works well provided you've done the right things during the day. Excuse me. So we're going to be talking about a daytime routine to set you up for a nighttime success in terms of sleep. Light type. So you've heard a lot about blue light, bright light, white light, and you've heard about that it's not great for sleep, and absolutely all the evidence supports that. So certainly we're going to be talking about the light typing and the timing of that light. So now absolutely you want to be taking in the brighter lights of the spectrum. Also, blue light doesn't work in with that, but blue light's emitted from our screens. The blue light really helps with the definition. So I don't know if you've ever operated your laptop or your mobile on night mode, but you'll see that the definition is impaired, and it's the blue light in the screen that really helps that definition. So blue light absolutely suppresses one of our sleep hormones, melatonin, and it really suppresses it. So we need to address that blue light at nighttime, but it's fine during the day. In terms of nutrition, I'll be covering the do's and don'ts of nutrition, but that's provided you get a good night's sleep, because regardless of, it's very hard to implement the do's of nutrition if you're sleep impaired. So the priority is sleep. Otherwise, you'll be implementing the don'ts. Movement is important to build sleep pressure. However, as I said earlier, it's hard to create or do movement or generate movement and create sleep pressure when we are deprived of energy because we're sleep impaired. And regular breaks. I mentioned that mindful mind and doing that throughout the day. This is where regular breaks come into it. So the reason why I bring this up is because you think about our typical day, we've got our senses stimulated by notifications, emails, WhatsApp chat things. You've got text messages, you've got Facebook messages, you've got Instagram messages, you've got phone calls. You've got so much input, so much stimulation, and it really agitates the brain, and we become quite overwhelmed with this excessive sensory overload. So what regular breaks do is help, I guess, clear the brain, to bring it down, so that we can better will consolidate the inputs that are coming in. We can better respond emotionally, and we can also regulate cortisol, which I'm going to get into. So cortisol is that stress hormone, which when that's elevated, that really impairs our ability to fall asleep in the evening. So if we've had a stressful day, I can guarantee it's going to be a rough night trying to get to sleep and stay asleep, because the cortisol is too high. It has a natural, it goes with the circadian rhythm. So cortisol has a natural rhythm with the circadian rhythm. It gets out of the circadian rhythm, this night-day cycle, when we're allowing the stress to get out of control and we're not in control of the stress. The way to get in control of your stress is to adopt that mindful mindset, which we're going to go into ways in which you can do that. So just in terms of explaining a bit more about this circadian rhythm, this night-day cycle, it governs what our cells do, right? So it's our cells operate around a night-day cycle, and that's how they're programmed. And they're signaling, the communication to every cell is around, okay, daytime you do day activities, nighttime you do night activities. So if you put that into context, we're wired to digest during the day, to assimilate foods, to create energy, to get us through the day. We are not wired to digest food at night. Hence why people on night shift really struggle with digestion if they're eating during night shift. So our cells will operate around this, do daytime functions and then nighttime functions. And what induces this, or what keeps us asleep, are certain hormones, neurotransmitters, and I want to introduce this thing of core body temperature because it's important in terms of getting that right in the evening to help you sleep. So let's start with one. I don't want to overwhelm you with this graph that you have in front of you. So we're going to start with melatonin, right? So our melatonin it initiates the race to sleep. So it initiates the timekeeper. It's the timekeeper. It says, okay, on your marks, get set, cells, we're going to start initiating the sleep function. Okay, so then the cells go about doing sleep time things. And so during the day, it's low relative to the others. So this is a relative, a nominalized values. So it's all relative to one another. So during the day, melatonin's low. If your melatonin's elevated during the day, that's when you feel sleepy. And that can happen from if you're taking melatonin medication and that hasn't worn off. So melatonin medication is really high in terms of its dosage. And you may still have some in your system in the morning and even later morning, and hence why you feel so tired in that early phase of the day, because of the melatonin still very active. Naturally, it's low during the day and it starts increasing in the evening. So you can start to see this rise at about 5 p.m., the melatonin really kicking up, and it really gets to its peak, in the early hours of the morning, and then starts winding down quite drastically for the morning start. So we want to work with this melatonin cycle. So we certainly want to be alert during the day, and we want to have it doing what it's doing in the evening so that we can fall asleep, and our cells are doing nighttime functions such as enabling us to stay asleep. Now, if we switch from that green line, which was the melatonin, to cortisol, the blue line, cortisol is that uplifting. It drives us, right? It's what takes us towards achieving those deadlines. It's what keeps us going. It's what keeps us away from that tiger, that threat. So cortisol is really helpful when we have, when it's in this circadian rhythm. It's unhelpful, for example, when it's elevated in the evening. And with elevated cortisol, you're going to have low melatonin. They very much don't like one another. They oppose one another. So you can see from this diagram that cortisol is actually elevated or peaking in the morning. So if you're in this circadian rhythm and your circadian rhythm's working well, I'm talking generally here because this is going to be a bit different for those night. So this is very much working well with the morning larks, but morning larks have really got this, peak cortisol performance, and they're ready to go, and they're really going to hit their straps, that early morning and do their best work. And then, as you can see, it fades in the evening. So you're not going to get much out of morning larks in the evening. So what happens with cortisol, it doesn't follow this natural curve, and it will keep rising if we keep allowing the stress to come into our lives and we don't moderate those stress things that are coming in, or that overwhelm in terms of all those different stimuluses, whether it be notifications, requests from boss, requests from partner, all that sort of stuff. If we don't do some modulation around that, or managing that, then it can allow cortisol to rise. Hence, it's elevated in the evening and reduces your ability to fall asleep. The last one here is the yellow line, and this is our core body temperature. The key point I want to make about this is that we need a drop in our core body temperature in the evening. And what's going to give you that core drop? So this is where this artificial regulation of temperature really impacts our ability to sleep. So we're very connected. Our senses are conveying information to our brain, and our senses are very attuned to the environment. When we artificially regulate that environment, such as through air conditioning, we don't notice these changes. Whereas, if we're not influenced by this artificial environment and we go with a natural environment, then our senses are starting to pick up that, okay, the sun's peaked at 2 p.m. or whatever. My core body temperature is it's elevated. However, as the sun goes down, the environment generally starts to cool, and our senses pick that up. And so therefore they're picking up, this sensory input is saying that, okay, night is about to fall. So, we get another cue that our cells need to start doing nighttime things. In order to help this fall in core body temperature, a hot shower at night really helps with this, because what we want to do is protect our core body temperature. We really want our body temperature to stay within a narrow range. We need to, as a species, keep it within that 36 to 38 degrees. Outside of that, that's when we start having real survival problems. And so it's a real narrow band. So to help regulate that core body temperature in the evening and to allow that drop, have a hot shower, because what it does is the body will think, well, there's a whole lot of hot around me. I need to dissipate this heat because I don't want to get too hot and overheat. So then your body will send its heat to the peripherals, which is your skin. And so after a hot shower, you will liberate a whole lot of heat, and a heap of heat, so much so that your body will feel cold after a hot shower. So that's one way to acknowledge that temperature drop and to start indicating that it's to the body, it's time to get ready for bed. So a hot bath is good. Hot magnesium bath, because magnesium relaxes our nervous system. This graph is just showing cortisol working with the circadian rhythm, which was shown in the previous slide. But what I wanted to highlight here was just around the bottom, it's the x-axis. So you'll see some wording on the x-axis to show that in the morning is when if you're working with the circadian rhythm, that you're going to be most active in the morning, and acknowledging that, yes, in the afternoon you'll have decelerated activity. So it's actually normal to feel tired in the afternoon, particularly to have that 2 p.m. slump. So if you look at here, look at where cortisol is at 2 p.m. It's at its lowest point during the day. So hence why that afternoon siesta has found its way into life, because back then we acknowledged the way we felt, and we went with it, right? We surrendered to it, whereas the modern lifestyle doesn't suit that. It's well, I've got to keep pushing, I've got to keep pushing towards that deadline. So therefore I have a coffee mid-afternoon, but what I'm going to get to when I get to coffee is that coffee will then keep you awake at night in the mid-afternoon. So if you can, and certainly good employers are embracing this, such as they have sleep pods, they allow quiet rooms to you to go and meditate, to have downtime, to unwind, to just relax. If you've got that in your workplace, utilize it at 2 p.m. or around, when you sort of start hitting the wall. So just acknowledge it, surrender to it, say this is normal. In order for me to be most productive, I'm going to have to go with my body, and I want to set myself up for a good night's sleep. So certainly you don't want to be napping after 3 p.m. because that will only make it worse at night. You won't be able to fall asleep. But before 3 p.m., it's okay to have that 10-minute power nap. It's the time to do a 10-minute meditation to really help lift you again for carrying on afternoon, evening activities. But again, you want to make sure those afternoon, evening activities aren't too energizing. So you really don't want to be doing your exercise a couple of hours before bed. It's only going to elevate your cortisol, and it's going to prolong that ability to fall asleep. And you're going to miss that physical repair time, which you can see here is those early hours. So I mentioned before, so around that sort of 10 p.m. to about 2 a.m., according to this graph, is where we get that physical repair. And then later on in that morning, so 3 to 6 a.m., is our psychological repair, so our emotional repair that I mentioned before. So that's probably the key takeaways from this graph here. Work with it, work with your circadian rhythm, not against it. You work against your circadian rhythm, it will really result in detrimental health outcomes. So the sources of stress, I just want to touch on the sources of stress that are going to elevate cortisol during the day, because we don't want to keep allowing cortisol to keep rising during the day. We want to modulate it. We want to control it. We want it to work in with the circadian rhythm. So it's important to acknowledge, sources of stress are going to come from other people's emotions, what they present to us. So, if someone's angry towards us, that's going to result in a stress event for our body. And if you have a mindful mindset, you'll be able to take 10 seconds or take 5 and then respond appropriately to calm down that other person, as opposed to adding fuel to the fire. So poor diet will obviously not support our ability to regulate cortisol, such as when I say poor diet, like if you're having excessive amounts of coffee, and I really refer to excessive amounts of coffee beyond 1 cup a day. So ideally you want to have that morning cup of coffee and then no more thereafter. And I'll get onto the reasoning or the rationale behind that in a few more slides. Excessive exercise will raise cortisol. So these high intensity exercise sessions will lift your cortisol production. So you don't want to be doing really this high intensity stuff in the evening. The best types of exercise in the evening are walking, yoga, Pilates, really that low, moderate intensity. So you want to switch your high intensity training for the mornings when you can do the morning exercise. Do your high intensity sessions then, because that's when cortisol should be elevated. And there's nothing wrong with elevating cortisol if it's not elevated in the mornings with high intensity exercise. So yes, doing that switch around exercise will really help. So just low, moderate, easygoing exercise, just basic movement in the evening. Lack of sleep will elevate cortisol. So as I said, it just feeds this wheel of compounding essentially. So it's a real difficult one to break. So if you're in a bad sleep cycle, then you want to focus on the key area that you think is driving your lack of sleep. So it could be excessive alcohol in the evening, could be excessive caffeine during the day. It could be what else? Maybe a lack of movement. You're not moving your body at all. It could be the lack of natural sunlight in the morning and too much light in the evening. So whatever you think is the predominant cause that's driving your sleep deprivation, address that and just focus on that. So, focus on one thing at a time and then look for other improvements thereafter. There's the obvious one, stress sources coming from the environment, some of which we can't control. There's air pollution, there's electromagnetic frequencies. So that's, emitted from television screens, computer screens, radio waves, microwaves, our phones, our phones are probably the predominant source that we're most exposed to. And then rising damp, mold in the house is a big one. Okay, so in terms of putting this into context, what are the uppers, downers? I've spoken about the uppers, so I'm not going to go into that. You can read through that quicker than what I can talk to it. I'm going to talk more about how you can regulate cortisol during the day. So when we feel like we're in control, so that thing that I've got this, Nate, or someone's telling us you've got this, the moment we start thinking that we have control of the situation, that provides a stress relief. So having and what can help this is really focusing what's in your control as opposed to things out of your control. So you cannot control another person's response, but you can control how you respond to that person. So really focusing on you and not controlling the other person is key. So just things that you are within your control, such as your sleep, your health. I guess if your work's not supporting your health, then it's having the conversation with your manager and having that open conversation with them and expressing that, you're acknowledging that your performance isn't great, but hey, I'm really sleep deprived and you can help me get better sleep by allowing me to come to work a bit later in the morning because I'm really wired as a night person. I can't do early starts, whatever. It's just having that open conversation or looking for a career change. I mentioned before light to moderate exercise. Explain that well. Nature. So connecting with nature throughout your day is a really good starting point. So, going down, walking along the coast, if you live along the coast where you're getting the ocean breeze, and you're getting the smells from the ocean. It really, you feel relaxed. You feel that you're more in control. You feel more present. So any connection with nature, it can be walking in a park. If you go for a walk in the park, take your shoes off and walk with bare feet on the ground. Same with the beach. Just connecting, grounding yourself with nature, the feeling like, so your senses are picking up that you're walking on ground. It's far better than walking in shoes. You'll feel better as a result of taking off those shoes. Have lunch in the park with a colleague and don't talk about work, talk about other things, and enjoy lunch sitting in the park with a friend if you live near a park and you work in the city or whatever. Pets. So pets can really ground us. So just connecting with animals, engaging with animals. And if you don't have pets, you can connect with nature or animals by observing their behavior. So just watching a butterfly and just focusing on that butterfly and focusing on what that butterfly does and how beautiful it is and how gracious it is, or focusing on that eagle in the sky, just soaring and just moving with the thermal currents of the air. Focus on, it could be a bird in a tree, a bird that's singing. Watch them interact with other birds. Watch them feed their younger. So really engaging in nature in that way really relaxes us. It grounds us. It reduces cortisol. Positivity and optimism, goes without saying, really. So the more positively you think and you look for the positive in any situation, the better you'll regulate your stress. Easier said than done. So I acknowledge that as well, particularly if you're going through a lot of hardship. Rest and relaxation, key. So sprinkling that throughout your day. As I said, utilize that um, quiet room in your workplace, or having a quiet room in the house that you can go and restore and rejuvenate. It may be just a walk in your garden. It may be sitting on the porch, observing sunset, whatever it is. Do more of it and make it a routine. You'll feel better for it. Calling a friend that makes you laugh, or someone, or watching a funny show that really just calms you, gets you laughing, gets you into the present, so that you're not thinking about all your work deadlines or thinking about the things you haven't done or whatever. Just anything that takes you and puts you into that here and now, that brings about that moment of joy, happiness, laughter. So hanging out with people that elevate your energy is great. So looking at your peer group, who are the people that lift you higher? If you're finding you're hanging out with people that bring you down, or maybe doing less things with them, and finding that peer group that's going to be uplifting. Mindfulness activities I'm going to get to, so I won't talk to them about with this slide. However, I will talk to comfort foods. The reason why you gravitate toward comfort foods is that they when you eat, it does switch on your digestive function, or your system realizes that there's food there to process, and that is your relax state, right? So you have that sympathetic state, which is your fight and flight response, which I've spoken a lot about. But we also have that relax and restorative state. So repair, relax, restore, digest. So rest and digest is commonly what it's referred to. And so comfort foods can help regulate your stress, but they don't benefit your health. And so it's just important to acknowledge why you might be going towards your comfort foods. It might be because you're stressed and you haven't got other tools to better manage your stress. So I'm hoping I've just suggested some key tools that you can sprinkle into your day to avoid that evening binge eating. A lot of binge eating in the evening, a lot of excessive alcohol consumption in the evening is a result of unregulated stress or poor sleep, which could be contributed by unregulated stress, or it could be the starting point could be just poor sleep. Okay, mindfulness. So don't get too carried away or too concerned about mindfulness. It is just whatever brings you into the here and now. It doesn't necessarily mean meditation. So you can do mindfulness without meditating. So meditating is a form of mindfulness, but it's not the only form of mindfulness. So it's best to find what works for you in terms of bringing you into the here and now. Some people, it's playing sport. Some people, it's their favorite exercise, and that could be dancing. For some people, it's really engaging with what their children are doing and playing with their children, or throwing the ball for their pet, their dog. That can be mindfulness, because you're in a park, so you're surrounded by nature. You're with your pet, that's an animal, it's part of nature, and you're engaged in their activity, and you've got other dogs that are interacting and they make you laugh or whatever. So it can be that time you spend with your dog in the park. It can be meditation for those that can meditate or want to learn to meditate. So that's a form of mindfulness. Breathing exercises. Breathing exercises can be a form of meditation. So they're all very interrelated, but you can call it just breathing exercises. So, you can relax yourself during this presentation and not think about the work you've got at 1 p.m. By just starting to connect with your breath. So you can just start connecting, with the air that's going in. So breathe through your nose. Just focus on that deep inhale and allowing it to sit, in your body, to disperse, to oxygenate your cells. So part of, one of the fuel sources that are important to metabolism is oxygen. So when we're stressed, we are shallow breathing. We're not getting in enough oxygen. And that can be a source of why we are energy deprived, because we need oxygen to combust with the carbohydrates and to produce fuel, or to combust with the fat or the protein to produce fuel. So oxygen's key. And not only taking oxygen in, but breathing out the byproduct, carbon dioxide, is also key. So if we have too much carbon dioxide in our system, then we create that more acidic environment, which disease can manifest. And furthermore, uh, it can drive inflammation, that fire. And you don't want fire in your body, because that results in pain, discomfort, soreness, and fatigue. So breathing exercise is great. Taking in deep inhales, getting lots of oxygen, breathing out lots of carbon dioxide, very important. And disconnecting with that process, focusing on that process, is bringing you in the here and now. And I remember just recently reading a book, the importance of breathing is, it's the first thing we do when we come into the world, and it's the last thing we do when we leave the world. So it's so important that we know how to breathe. And that's why Buddhist monks, one of their starting points to being able to meditate is learning how to breathe properly. So that's part of their grounding, their foundational work is breathing, because it's so fundamental to life. Without breathing, without breath, we aren't, we don't live. Dancing is another form. So I've mentioned that. So it's whatever takes you into the here and now. And it's in sprinkling it throughout your day, as I've mentioned multiple times over, to manage that stress hormone cortisol. So, having your morning exercise, getting you out and about, outside, in nature, hopefully, doing a bit of exercise is really helping just clear the mind, because we're focused on the activity. And ideally, to do this without looking at your phone. So one of the worst things you can do and really lose your day and lose the control of your day is by looking at the phone first thing in the morning. First thing in the morning is your time. You own it. You're in control. So utilize that time of the day and take control and do the things that nourish you, not be at the beck and call and the whim of those emails, those notifications, those Facebook posts that make you feel jealous. Don't look at the phone first thing in the morning. Get out and do the stuff that are going to lay the foundations of that health pyramid that you saw at the start, to make you more resilient. In terms of, how else you can do mindfulness at lunchtime, you can get out of the office, don't book Zoom calls or meetings at lunchtime. Actually book that time for you, for that relax, digest. It's important that you eat. It's important that you allow your ability to digest that food. It's important that you do that in a relaxed state. It's important that you rejuvenate and you stop the sensory overload coming in, because you would have been bombarded that in the morning session. So it's important to take time out, to lock it into your diary. Say you don't do lunchtime meetings, you're not available. It's your time. And every employee has the right to a lunch break. So utilize it. And you will be more productive in the afternoon by having that break than not having that break. So if you want to really reduce your work hours and increase your productivity, it's doing these sort of things that are going to drive that productivity: better sleep, more mindfulness, better stress regulation. Okay, let's rip into the evening. So we've spoken a lot about daytime activities. So we're going to go into an evening routine. Before we jump into the evening routine, I just want to touch on, and I think I mentioned it before actually. So this is again another version of the circadian rhythm, but it's showing you how sleep pressure builds during the day, and to a point at which it peaks. That's when we're sound asleep, and then the sleep pressure declines. As you can see, that sleep urge, there's a peak during the day at around 2 p.m. Hence why I want you to take some time out between that 12 and 2, because you do have a sudden onset of sleep. It's not the time to have a coffee. It's time to work with your body. It's time to actually take time out for yourself and allow you to better operate in the afternoon and to have a better night's sleep, so you can be really productive the next day. Okay, so what does this sleep routine look like? As I said, consistency is key. So consistent time to bed, and you want to choose a bedtime that you think that works for you, right? As I said, it's going to be different from everyone. Mine's between 9 and 10 p.m. at night. That's what I'm focused on. So for me, having that 9 to 10 p.m. at night, I really eat before 7 to allow myself not to be full. It's hard to sleep on a full stomach, and it's hard to sleep on an empty stomach. So you want to be just right, the Goldilocks thing, not too heavy, not too light, just right. I think that's the just right slow advertisement, but anyway, you get what I mean. So having your dinner 2 to 3 hours at least before you want to fall asleep. Ideally, you don't want to be having food and then thinking I need to get to bed because I've got an early start. That's just not going to happen. So really, timing your dinner around your sleep time to bed. And then after dinner, it's relaxing. It's allowing our food to digest. It's unwinding. You really want to be unwinding. And this is the time, it's after dinner that you want to start thinking about, I need to allow the body to connect with the circadian rhythm and to connect with that night time cycle, which is, for the cells to do nighttime functions, and that's to put you to sleep. So you want to start thinking about that connection. That connection will come with having a cooler body temperature, and secondly, seeing darkness. Right. So you got to start, your light receptors in your eyes need to start registering darkness, and they need to start registering it at least 2 hours before bed, if not ideally 2 to 3 hours before bed, because the body then needs to start, you know, producing hormones, signals, functions around nighttime. It doesn't operate like a drug. Our body actually is, it manufactures what we need, right? And so we need to send the cue to start doing nighttime things. Then our body will start building up the melatonin to a point where it starts really inducing that sleepy feel. That's going to take time. We need to work with the body. Don't think that our body works like a drug where you can pop a pill and bang, you're asleep, or you can pop a pill, it solves this. Our physiology is not wired like that. It needs input to manufacture output. And so it's a process like sowing and reaping. When you sow a seed, you don't bear the fruit that day. There's a process. So we need to work with the process. So really dimming your lights, reducing. So going into your settings of your laptop, settings of your phone, putting nighttime mode on. So a lot of these devices allow you to sync the nighttime mode with the night day cycle, right? So it will register with the sunset, sunrise. So your nighttime mode will switch on with sunset, and daytime mode will switch on for sunrise. So it's perfect. Our technology is working with us. So why not utilize it that way? When I say relax and unwind, you don't want to be taking in too much more sensory information. You want to start dumbing down that sensory information. So really, unless it's critical that you deliver something in the morning or a deadline or whatever, or you have to let it slip to the goalie and allow yourself to surrender to that commitment. However, the next night you want to get back on track and get back into your routine. So if you are thrown off course by a deadline or a work commitment or whatever, social commitment, then getting back on track the next day is important. Ideally, you want everything to evolve around your ideal routine, but life gets in the way. I acknowledge that. You've probably had a chance to read ahead. I'm running out of time. I'm going to actually run 5 minutes past the hour because I started 5 minutes past the hour. But if you have to go, I acknowledge that, and I'll share the recording. So feel free to dial out if you need to, because I'll share this recording. But for those that can hang on, really, lighting candles really create a great mood in the evening, really dims the light and minimize the amount of light going into your eyes. That's a good way to unwind. And it often, we need that point of reflection in the evening. So what happens often is the only point of reflection we have during the day is when we're lying in bed. And that's why you can't fall asleep, because you're processing everything from the day. You haven't sprinkled mindfulness throughout your day to allow the emptying, the processing, and enable you to then function better with the new stimulus. When you relax in the evening and minimize the inputs, such as turning off your notifications, not looking at email, not looking at your phone, minimizing all those stimulus inputs, it enables you to start reflecting on the day and processing it. And you're not doing it in bed. Doing it in bed is only going to increase anxiety, increase sleep anxiety, and cause a bad night's sleep. Because with the rise of anxiety, you are increasing that stress hormone cortisol. Okay, we don't want that. So in order to avoid that anxiety, start the wind down earlier, start it outside of bed, and start reflecting on your day, start journaling, start writing down the things that you didn't accomplish. That's fine. Putting it on paper, you can deal with it tomorrow. Start putting down the thoughts. If you've got some negative thoughts that are manifesting, that are circling in your mind, write them down. Deal with it tomorrow. You're not going to solve the world's problems just before you sleep. So put it on paper, get it out of your mind, and then finish that journaling exercise with gratitude, because gratitude will bring a sense of contentment. That contentment puts you back in control. It enables that peace of mind. And so, with gratitude, what we're acknowledging is thanks for what we have. So, it's putting your attention to what you have and the focus away from what you don't have or you haven't achieved. Okay. Bring the focus into what you have around you and give thanks for it, or acknowledging the greatness that has happened during that day. And I can guarantee through doing this exercise every night, and the science backs it, you will then look for more gratitude during the day. You'll be more at peace. You'll have more peace of mind during the day. You'll better respond to emotional situations because your mind's more at peace. You're more in control. You're focusing on what you have and not on what you don't have. And you'll start seeing more of it come into your day. So you'll start to actually notice and acknowledge all the beautiful gifts that are coming into your day, all the support and love that you're getting from others. When we're busy doing, running around, activity, we can miss all that brilliance of life. Life can just sneak past us, and we can miss all those little signals that someone might be telling us, our loved ones, our children may be telling us that they need help because we're too busy doing. So I really encourage you to adopt a gratitude or journaling practice in the evening to empty the mind and to finish with that peace and contentment that ultimately you have everything, all the resources that you need already. And what you're doing each day is just growing as a person and building on those resources. But ultimately, you have everything you need to live and live a happy life already. We need to acknowledge that. We often get carried away in these first world problems, and we forget to realize what we have and what some people don't have. There's always someone that's more disadvantaged, that are going through more hardship than you. So really appreciating and acknowledging what you have, and putting out love for those that don't have what you have is the best way to wrap up the day. It really does. It brings that peace of mind, that contentment, and it will relax you. Cortisol will be rock bottom, melatonin will be soaring, and you'll fall asleep with peace of mind. Some other things that I've mentioned here are just helps unwind, right? Doing your meditation in the evening, doing some breathing exercises in the evening, doing some light stretching after your hot bath or your hot shower that helps bring down the core body temperature really helps, because that's telling your muscles, hey, don't be tense, relax. And then that relax message is going from your muscles to your brain. Just relax, Anthony. Don't be tense. Nothing to be tense about. We're going into our sleep phase. And really creating discipline around no electronics in your room. If you suffer sleep anxiety, because you watch the time and you're thinking, oh, the time's ticking away, I'm not falling asleep. Turn the clock the other way so you don't see the clock, and really just engage in breathing or visualization and get your mind out of, I'm not falling asleep, I've got a deadline, I've got to get up early. That just creates more sleep anxiety. Okay, I'm not going to have time to go through the nutrition, but I'll certainly share these slides with uh, the recording. But essentially, what this nutrition slide advocates is really holistic eating. It's not doing the ketone diet. It's not doing veganism. It's not doing any type of diet, low carb diet, whatever diet you want to call whatever diet. It's just eating whole foods, wide variety in moderation, and you'll get the nutrition that you need for good sleep. And, if you have got a good sleep hygiene, you're in a better mind to implement the do's and to forget about the don'ts of nutrition. So I prefer you adopting healthy eating principles as opposed to getting fixated on a particular diet. I'm sure there's a sleep diet out there, but a sleep diet will only result in nutritional deficiencies elsewhere. So really adopt just whole eating, variety of foods, and embrace your food and not see it as calories, protein, fats, all that sort of stuff. It doesn't help. It actually creates anxiety and stress. Uh, Caffeine, I mentioned before, just one coffee a day ultimately, because it's got such a long half life. It hangs around for a long period, and it actually interferes with that sleep urge. So that sleep urge that's generally rising throughout the day, it will impair that sleep urge and stop it. And so hence, coffee really blunts it and really prolongs that chance for us to fall asleep at our sleep time. So really, if you're going to have a coffee, make sure you have it at least 8 to 10 hours before your bedtime, and really minimizing the number of caffeine sources throughout the day. Better you get your energies from mindful practices sprinkled throughout the day. They will lift your energy to a new level. You don't need caffeine. Alcohol, yes, temporary sedative, but ultimately will impair sleep. It will fragment your sleep, and it really impairs REM sleep. REM sleep, remember, is important for emotional regulation and for our creativity. So if you really want to lose emotional regulation and be angry, aggressive, unhappy, and you don't want to be creative, you don't want to help solve the world's problems, then sacrifice your REM sleep by drinking. It's not serving your sleep. It's a temporary sedative, but once it wears off, you'll be wide awake, can't sleep. So it doesn't work. Really cut it out. Introduce mindful practices throughout the day and in the evening as a substitute. Sleep medication. I don't really want to talk to this other than if you're on it, what's better for sleep? If you're an insomniac, what's proven, where the evidence is for CBTI, so cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. That's what you want for sleep, not sleep medication. If your doctor's got you on sleep medication, seek a sleep therapist, a sleep specialist that specializes in CBTI. That's the stronger evidence, much stronger evidence. Like the sleep medication is only slightly better than placebo. It's a waste of money. It makes you drowsy in the morning. It doesn't help with getting you in this circadian rhythm, because ultimately it's artificial. It's not natural. So go to get CBTI. It's proven way more effective than sleep medication. Ultimately, it's going to be a combination of you doing these lifestyle and food choices that are really going to ultimately create this good sleep hygiene, a good night's sleep. So, as I said, you need to think holistically. However, act in the area that most needs your support. So you would know that. You will know that it's evening work, or you haven't allowed enough time for your mind to unwind. You will know that you're drinking too much coffee or too much alcohol. Focus in that big area improve that, and then look at the other areas that we spoke about. So focus in one area after this webinar. Think holistically, embed a routine, and be consistent with that routine. And for those that are still with us, still with me, for joining the webinar today, I'm absolutely more than delighted to have a 15-minute free consultation with you to tailor what we've spoken about to your circumstances. So feel free to email me with the email address on this slide, anthony@me&my-wellness.com.au, or you can find me on Facebook and message me, or Instagram, message me that way. But yeah, if you've attended the sleep webinar, you are certainly more than welcome to do a 15-minute tailoring consultation with me. So thanks for joining the webinar. I really appreciate it. If you want to connect with me and follow me, then these are my tags, my website. I always have lots of free resources for you to improve your health and well-being. They're free. They're in abundance. I'm constantly updating them every week. So feel free to look at any of these mediums, and you'll find lots of wonderful free resources. So thanks today, and I'm happy to answer any questions for those that have still with me. I think I've lost most of you. So anyway, I'm going to stop the record, and if you've got any questions, please ask.